We meet at the Flying Saucer restaurant, right across from the Blue Lagoon. The kind of place that fills in the cracks of ordinary life with color and kitsch so that it becomes something more, something with possibilities, something, perhaps, a little magical. As it is, tourists crowded at the front door, waiting to get in. I went through the takeout entrance and there, having managed to grab a small table right across from the stairs to the washrooms, was Craig Davidson. He's taking me on a road trip, a tour of his Niagara Falls, the place he grew up in, that he returns to, and that continues to inspire him in books such as his 2013 Giller Award-nominated Cataract City and his newest, The Saturday Night Ghost Club. Craig Davidson, author of The Saturday Night Ghost Club, In Front of the House of Frankenstein on Clifton Hill in Niagara Falls, Deborah Dundas, in that latter book, Jake Breaker, now a brain surgeon in Toronto, looks back on the summer when he was 12 and his uncle Calvin suggested they start a Saturday Night Ghost Club. It's a coming-of-age novel, marking the time when you realize there's more going on in life than meets the eye. This is where I grew up, and maybe the age that I'm at now things seem to be slipping through my fingers a lot quicker than they used to, says Davidson, 42. You want to go back to times when time was going at a different velocity. These summers felt like they lasted forever. It takes place throughout Niagara Falls and the area around it, areas you can get to by bike if you're a kid, and some by car. It was also the scene of Cataract City, that being the nickname of this place. Article continued below. Davidson is fascinated by the gritty side. Although his life is fairly normal, he grew up upper middle class, his father a banker and his mother a nurse. Now he's married, living in Toronto with a son in kindergarten. He had a summer job working at Marineland, started when he was 14, as a sweeper, moving his way up over the years, and the park appears in both Cataract City and the Saturday Night Ghost Club where it makes an appearance as Land of Oceans. We drive up through the back way. That used to be the employee parking lot, Davidson says as we pass a grown-over patch of concrete. You can still see the bollards. We go back out to the main road and to the park's entrance. The lot is surprisingly full, but even here weeds look ready to reclaim the land and erase time. We talk about pathetic fallacy a bit, we're writers after all. It brings to mind the line in Saturday Night. In most towns, things change. Vacant lots become parking lots, or gentrification hits and they become tapas restaurants and dog grooming salons. But where I come from, those weedy lots become part of the scenery. People would miss them if they were gone. I think with Niagara Falls, for a lot of people it's a surface city, Davidson says. They come here and they go to Marineland and they go to the falls and they walk up and down Clifton Hill and then they're on to the next thing, but every city has layers. And a lot of people don't see under the initial surface. Quite striking is how quiet the rest of the town is, how still the neighborhood that lies east of the spine of Clifton Hill. Rows of white clapboard houses line streets with idyllic names like Walnut in a working-class area with the Post cereal plant nearby. You're away from the noise and the people and the cars, but the big casino sign, the bright lights and neon haze are never far away, transforming ordinary life into something brasher and more colorful. Here's where I thought the occultorium and so beta would be, Davidson says as we turn onto Center Street. The occultorium is where, in the book, Jake's uncle sold snake oil to people who needed a little magic in their lives, to make it bearable, to heal the wounds you can't make out with the naked eye. And, hilariously, so beta, the shop a guy opened when videotape wars first started. VHS one, but beta is better, he kept insisting even as customers failed to darken his door. We turn onto Clifton Hill. Wow, the noise and the lights hit us. It's midday so the crowds aren't huge yet, still, hordes of tourists huff and puff up that steep spine of a street while the haunted house attractions promise a bone-chilling thrill. We take postcard snapshots. Article continued below. Davidson also writes horror stories under the name Nick Cutter, The Deep, The Troop, Little Heaven, books which Stephen King once called old-school horror at its best. The kind where there might be dismemberment, things coming out of people's eyeballs, the sort of books, like all good horror, that allow us to examine our deepest fears before putting them back on the shelf. The fears that haunt the souls he deals with in the Davidson books, though, are more subtle. In Saturday Night, ghost stories are used to explore how resilient we are, how our mind helps us to survive, and how, sometimes, our memories help us take the horrible things that happen to us and weave them into a life that still has hope. It's an examination, like most good literature is, of how we live our lives. I do think, in some halcyon future dare book, that I'll find that true middle ground between what I write under my own name and what I write as Cutter, says Davidson. I have my obsessions, my sense of human nature in all its prettiness and ugliness, which no doubt expresses itself no matter who I'm writing as. We head back up, get a picture in front of Ripley's Believe It or Not. Let's go to the casino, he says. We do exactly what we've been talking about, look for an artificial thrill to match the big thrill of seeing the falls. He and his buddies come down for a guy's weekend, sometimes bet on sports and play some poker. As much as I enjoy it, I'm scared of it too, Davidson says. Watch guys who just lose, there's a certain glaze-eyed look, just a robot counting out money. There doesn't seem to be any joy in either the wins or the losses. We walk through the lights and sounds and sensory overload of the slots room and into the poker room. It doesn't look like much fun, truth be told. Mostly guys around a few tables, shorts and fanny packs, topped with baseball caps. But roulette is real gambling. Basically a coin toss, a 48 to 52 chance. What color? He asks me. Red, I say. Red. I wouldn't make a good gambler. Can't take a stand. Red it is. It's good, he reassures. Round and round and round the wheel goes, and where it stops, I cover my eyes. It's okay, Davidson laughs. The croupier tosses a matching chip on the table. Good choice. Red again? He asks. Nope, we're going to cash out, says Davidson. I squeal, I can't believe it. Doubled our money, just like that. That thrill wasn't artificial, it was too real. And too easy. You can see how lives go down the drain, right? Davidson notes. But the money gets us to America. For Niagara Falls kids the border was always a fluid idea. Back in the day, Davidson says, when the bars in Ontario closed at 1 a.m., he and his friends would walk across the bridge to the U.S., where the bars would stay open later. All we needed was a driver's license. He has used both sides of the border in his books, including Cataract City. As we pass over the gorge, he notes that the place he envisioned the smugglers crossing was just around the bend near Goat Island and up a bit. There was a spot up from the falls, he said, a bridge, like an abutment, where as a kid he and his friends would dive in, and have to swim like hell back to shore. Go too far and you'd be caught in a rip and pulled out to the middle. When you're a kid you think you live forever, he says with a laugh, as we wonder at the crazy things we did and how we are even still alive. These days when he crosses the border it's often to talk about his book, Precious Cargo, about his time driving a school bus for special needs kids, to school bus driver conventions. A writer's got to make a living, and there are worse things than talking about your book. It beats an earlier job he did, in a cube farm, writing fake profiles for an online dating site, the last desperate bastion of someone who needed to earn a living one way or the other. It was definitely soul-corroding, he says. He only stuck it out a month as he couldn't live with himself. The neighborhood around Sammy's is marked by the same sort of white clapboard houses that populate Niagara Falls, on streets. The kind that imply hope, family, a little place to call your own. But talking earlier, Davidson said, there's a lot of desperate people over here. He points out the beer bottles on the curb. This street is surely sadder than the ones on the Canadian side. Still, dreams live as evidenced by the American flags in front of these houses. One is wrapped around its flagpole. In Sammy's, we order the meal of a Saturday night beer sop, pizza and wings. I recommend getting pepperoni. It sounds gross, but they're tiny circles of meat and they curl up, and when they're cooked there's a tiny pool of grease in them. In the middle of a summer afternoon, there are few customers besides us. On the jukebox the Bad Wolves sing, incredibly, a cover of the Cranberries' song, Zombie, the music bouncing off the dark, wood-paneled walls. Our final stop is the Screaming Tunnel. Just out of town, it's one of the few places in the book that exactly matches up in fact and fiction. It's where, in the Saturday Night Ghost Club, Jake and Uncle C go at midnight, thinking they might see the ghost of a girl who was violently killed. On the way out there we pass Lundy's Lane Cemetery, sun-dappled, looking leafy and peaceful, hardly scary at all. Yet it's the place where, in Jake's imagination, a tree branch against his window was the fingernail of a vampire roused from the catacombs beneath the cemetery. An exit or two down the QEW and we turn onto Mountain Road. Passing fields filled with midsummer crops, we make a couple of rights and come to a looped end. A guy's working on his car in a driveway, right across from a tunnel underneath an old railway overpass. It's clear he's used to thrill seekers. "This is our best haunted spot," says Davidson. "It's got the best legend, the best ambience. Even just optically the way it sets up to the eye, immediately it innately kicks off something in the human brain that's like there's something not cricket about that, it's true." Even as the sun beams down, throwing dappled shadows around us, the tunnel is evocative. It's covered with graffiti at the entrance. As we head through to the other side it's dark and damp and hollow and echoey until we emerge and blink in the bright sunshine. "For as long as I write books under my own name," says Davidson, referring to the Niagara Falls area, "if it's just people and characters and situation, the setting is going to be this. A place which, through the grit and the neon in the kitchen, the desperation, makes a connection deep within us, with whatever lies between the surface and the dark recesses within." Deborah Dundas is the Star's books editor. She is based in Toronto. Follow her on Twitter, Deb Dundas.